Hello everyone, welcome back to Michael T. Makes. Are you ready to light up your creativity? Today we're diving into the art and craftsmanship behind this stunning 14-inch laser engraved wooden lighthouse puzzle. Whether you're a puzzle enthusiast, a lover of intricate wooden design, or just looking for a unique centerpiece for your home, in this video we'll explore the intricate details, assembly tips, and why this puzzle is more than just a challenge, it's a journey worth taking. So grab your kit and let's build something amazing together. Let's get started removing the pieces from the wooden panels. The first piece that comes out is the lighthouse base structure that helps hold the top of the lighthouse together. The base support falls out easily after that. Flipping the board over, we can find the tabs on the back side that have not been cut by the laser. Stretching these tabs from the back and pressing the piece to the front will assure the tabs break as they need. The next piece for removal is the bottom roof support. There are 3 of these that fit together to hold the roof panels. I got back to the roof support. The piece with the honeycomb inside is the top base support. Grabbing the waist side and the actual piece itself, stretching the holding tab to break cleanly across and do the same for the opposite side. Flipping the board back over and pressing the 2 light socket rounds up and to the front, we can press the light socket supports up and to the front to stretch and break the tabs on the back side. Since the pieces here are a little smaller, rocking them up and down will be beneficial to remove them without damaging them. Even if the tabs are broken, they are a little more difficult to remove. After finally getting them out, the star support can be removed. Stretching and breaking the tabs across the line on both sides, the star support can be slid down and out of the panel. The next piece removed is the top roof panel support. A little of the waste came with the piece, but can be cleaned up in a snap. The last triangle for the roof panel support is removed and can be stacked up with the rest of the supports. Moving along to remove the long rails, the tabs are across the bottom to be less noticeable once removed. These can get a little tricky to remove because the bottom portion of the rail will start to stretch and twist, which might cause breakage if not handled correctly. So putting pressure on the bottom rail while stretching the tab is beneficial to minimize any damage to the pieces. The long rails are for the bottom of the lighthouse. The 6 middle rails are for the light structure, the lantern. And the 4 shortest rails are for the front and back of the bottom of the lighthouse, and 1 remaining long rail for the bottom. Once all the pieces are out of the panel, the remaining waste can be removed from the pieces. Removing the centers of the rails can be a little tricky, since they are small, but if you notice, one side of the center has a tab. So using the screwdriver from the kit, the pieces can be pressed from the back side, stretching the tab and breaking it cleanly across the line. After all the pieces are removed from the rails, the centers of the supports can be cleaned up. The majority of the centers are waste, with the exception of the honeycombs to be used for later to finish the top of the lighthouse. These are the only pieces that require glue to hold on the roof. Couple more small rails. Moving on to the lantern base, all the small pieces can be removed to get it cleaned up for assembly. All of this can be done directly over a waste receptacle or a box to catch the smaller pieces. After the lantern base was completely cleaned up, the base support can be cleaned up just the same. Looking at the back and pressing all the pieces towards the front to break the tabs cleanly. Cleaning up the work area is essential. Panel 2 is the easiest of all to remove the pieces. With only 5 side panels to remove, we can flip the board over to find the holding tabs. Along the bottom and the top are the majority of the tabs, and across the sides are a few. With the panel face up, the sides can be stretched upwards across the bottom and top to snap the holding tabs. Once complete, the sides can be done just the same, and the whole middle will fall right out. Once out, the remaining waste pieces can be removed from the sides. The small pieces can be removed from the side panels. I just used a waste piece for this. Tools of the trade. And the panels can be stacked up to the side. Cleaning up the work area is essential so we can see things a little more clearly. And moving on to the third and last panel for this project, one of the roof seam covers ended up coming out upon removal. So after putting it here and there, the last side for the base can be removed. Stretching the tabs on the back, on bottom, top, and then the sides, the piece can be removed, and the small pieces can be cleaned up from the inside. Counting them, stacking them, and getting them out of the way, flipping over the board, we can see the holding tabs are on the top and bottom of the side seam and window seam covers. Once looking back to the front side of the panel, the edges of the panel can be stretched up to snap the holding tabs on the back side. Snapping them all on one side, the opposite side can be done the same and the long side seam covers will fall right out. The window seam covers stick together at the inside line as well to help hold in place. Flipping the panel over, we can find the holding tabs on the window panes are all across the insertion tabs on the bottom of the panes. A simple press from the back, stretching, and snapping the holding tabs, the panes fall right out with a simple press. Moving along to the roof panels, the holding tabs are at the base and the tip of the roof panels, with nothing along the long edges. Starting at the sides, stretching and snapping the holding tabs, the roof panels will end up coming out with a little extra waste material that will have to be cleaned up and removed. Going one at a time, snapping the waste off, holding just outside of the holding tabs, and snapping the holding tabs. A few of the pieces had a little extra holding tab left over, so stacking them up in the end, the remaining can be scraped off with a screwdriver head or a fingernail. Going through all 6 window panes and getting the small blocks out of the window panes is relatively straightforward. Looking at the panes from the back side, the waste pieces can be pushed to the front of the panes to pop right out. Getting them stacked and counted to make sure there are no remaining waste pieces left, they can be stacked off to the side to proceed with the removal of the waste pieces for the seam covers. The window seam covers have no waste, but can be separated and placed to the side. The side covers for the base have the smaller pieces to remove for the allowance of the side seam retainers to hold the seam covers in place. Once cleaned up, they can be stacked to the side, and we can proceed to remove the roof seam covers and get the waste material removed from them and get the final pieces out of the panel. The remaining pieces that look like odd horseshoes are retaining clips that hold the seam covers in place. The first set removed are the retainers for the roof panel seam covers. There are holding tabs on one side of the portion that just starts to expand out. Pressing from the opposite side, on the back, will cause the holding tab to stretch enough to snap. Then going around the retainer to make sure it falls down cleanly. There are 6 needed, with 2 extra in the kit just in case one breaks during assembly. Once cleaned up and removed, the next set of retainers are the smallest, which are the star support retainers. Looking at the back side as well, Finding the holding tab is at the small flat top. The retainer can be pressed at the bottom side to stretch the tab, breaking it cleanly across the back. Once the tab is snapped free, it's just a matter of pressing around the retainer to get it to fall down and out of the panel. The remaining go the same, with a few extra just in case one breaks during assembly. Cleaning them up and stacking them out of the way, the last retaining clips for the side are removed by pressing on the back side as well. The holding tab is at the point of the clip. Once again, pressing towards the bottom of the horseshoe shape will allow the holding tab to stretch enough and snap, allowing the pieces to be pressed down and out of place to be cleaned up for assembly. There are 2 extra holding tabs here as well in case one breaks. The last pieces to remove from the panel are the corbel supports from under the lantern walkway. The holding tabs here are on one of the insertion tabs for the wall side. Pressing on the opposite side of the piece will assure all the holding tabs snap and the support will fall right out. Once the left side is done and cleaned up, the last pieces for the right side corbel supports can be removed in the same manner. All the pieces are now out of the panels. Now that everything is all cleaned up, it is time to take count on all the pieces of the Lighthouse to get ready for assembly. There are 6 side panels with one having a door, 6 side panel seam covers, 6 roof panels, 6 roof panel seam covers with 2 extra, 6 roof panel seam cover retainers with 2 extra, 6 window panes, 6 window pane seam covers, 1 base support, 1 lantern base, light bottom, 1 star support, 1 lantern top support, which is also part of the roof structure, 1 base top support, 1 top, 1 middle, and 1 bottom roof support structure. These pieces fit together to make the X shape for supporting the roof panels. 4 long rails for the base, 6 medium rails for the lantern walkway, 4 small rails for the bottom, at the front and back of the walkway, 18 side seam cover retaining clips with 2 extra, 6 star support retaining clips with 3 extra, 6 left corbel supports for the walkway with 1 extra, 6 right corbel supports for the walkway with 1 extra, 2 rounds for the light socket, 4 supports for the light socket rounds, 7 honeycomb shapes for the top mast of the lighthouse with 1 having a smaller hole. Now that all the pieces are counted, the lighthouse is ready for assembly. Using a spare roll of tape to make the job a little easier, and grabbing the base support to get ready to accept the sides. We can determine the side panel with the door that goes right behind the small round hole in the base, and can be placed to the side for the last panel to be put on. Grabbing one more side panel and the base support top, we can see the insertion tab and the support goes into the top middle of the hole of the base panel. Grabbing the star support and inserting one of the star tabs into the 2 square hole midway up the inside of the side panel, and sliding it up into the smaller square, a retaining clip can be inserted into the bottom, larger square to hold the star up and locked into place. Now that the tab and locking system are understood, the first side panel can be put into place, with the bottom of the side panel tabs sliding into the respective slots along one of the sides of the bottom base support. Pressing and fitting the piece snugly into place, grabbing another panel, and slide pressing the tabs into place on the opposite side. The top support for the base can be aligned at the top hole of the panel and pressed into place. Bringing the other side up to fit together, and again sliding the insertion tab into the top hole of the opposite panel, the structure will stand on its own while getting ready for the star support. With the star support in one hand and inserting a star tab from the inside, the tab can be slid up into place, and a star retaining clip can be inserted underneath the star tab to lock it into place. Rocking the tab back and forth will walk it into place with a slight snap when it reaches the end. Once the first star tab is in place, squeeze the opposite side and bend together so the opposite side tab can be inserted into the slot and slid up into place, with the retaining clip locking the panel into place. The beginning of the lighthouse is starting to take shape. Panel 3 goes on the same, with pressing the bottom tabs into the correct slots, sliding the top tab in, and squeezing the side in to bend it together, while sliding the star tab into place and locking it in. Side panel 4 goes in the same, pressing the top tabs and sliding the star tab into place, while squeezing the side panel and getting a retaining clip rocked into place. Panel 5 is just the same. The bottom tab gets pressed in, and the top. The only difference here is the star tab support starts to get a little tricky to maneuver around, since the other sides are locked into place. A little extra care should be used for this one, and the last and final tab. Once 5 side panels are in, it's time to consider the electrical portion of the lighthouse. The kit comes with a bag of hardware needed for assembly, and includes batteries and a tube super glue to glue the last 2 honeycombs on top. Dumping the hardware out to prepare, we will find that there are 1 battery holder, 2 AAA batteries, 1 button, 3 slide connectors for the wires, 1 flickering LED, 1 tube of superglue, 1 beveled screwdriver, and 3 rubber bands to help hold things in place if needed with the side strips. Now we can get started with the electrical. Inserting the LED wires into the light socket rounds, then the lantern base, the wires can be connected with the slide connectors to make the whole electrical assembly outside of the lighthouse. Both wires from the battery pack can get a slide connector. Lifting the lever on the top of the connector opens up the metal jaws inside so the wire can be inserted into the hole and clamped down on when the lever falls back down, holding a tight connection for this 3-volt LED. 1. The black wire from the battery pack will be connected to the black wire from the LED. 2. The red wire from the battery pack gets connected to the red wire on the button. 3. The open wire on the button gets a slide connector and connected to the only remaining wire for the LED. Now that all 3 connections are made, it's a good idea to check that everything works, and insert the 2 batteries to test the button and the LED. All working, the entire assembly can be dropped into the Lighthouse structure and fitted into place. Once in, the lantern base can be fitted to the inner set of slots on the lantern base and pressed down into place. Grabbing the 4 light socket round supports, the light socket can be completed and inserted into the lantern base. Starting with the top round and inserting into the top slot of the side support, the bottom round can be slid into the slot just below. Next, grabbing another support and sliding it onto the 2 rounds from the opposite side, the 2 remaining sides can be put on to complete the light socket itself. Once done, it can be slid down into the 4 holes in the middle of the lantern base, rocking back and forth to get it slid down all the way. Moving along to the bottom side again, the button can be press fitted into the small round hole remaining right behind the last panel. The fit is tight, so it will help rocking the button back and forth a little. The battery pack can be affixed to the inside of the Lighthouse base with the included double-sided sticky tape. I chose opposite side of the door for balance. Once in, let's get the last and final panel on the side of the base. Press fitting the bottom tabs into the last slots on the bottom, the base of the lantern will need to be pushed back up a little to get the final insertion tabs up top. Without minding so much of the top tab, putting the star tab into place will be easier to work with, free of movement. Squeezing the side panel in towards the star tab, reach behind the panel with the screwdriver and press down towards the inside of the star support instead of the star tab itself, so as not to damage or break the last star tab. Once down enough, the panel can be squeezed further to allow the star tab to slide through the side panel. This can get super tricky because the star wants to keep pushing up at this rate. So, keeping just the right amount of tension down on the tab while it comes through is essential to not break or damage the tab. Once a majority of the way through, the panel can be rocked back and forth to allow the tab to come through further. If all else fails, use the screwdriver to press the star tab up and into place, using the slight prying motions of the base of the slot to reach as far in as possible to reduce any damage. Got it this time. A final star retaining clip can be inserted under the star tab, and the sides are complete. It's a good idea at this time to make sure everything is pressed together for the next step, because inserting the retaining clips for the side panel seam covers gets extremely hard if the side panels are slightly off in alignment. Grabbing a long side seam cover strip from the pile and getting a visual on the face side of the strip and figuring top from bottom, the strip can be inserted into the square slot on the base where the two sides join, then inserting the top into place, while lifting the lantern base up to accept the top of the strip into the slot at the top of the seams. Once in, the lantern base can be pressed back down. The retainers can lock the side seam covers in place into the correlating slot and holes in the two pieces. Rocking the retainer back and forth helps it to slide into place. Starting in the middle and moving out, the bottom is the trickiest and could be saved for last. The top retainers are the easiest and usually snap right into place, no problem. Moving around all the side seam covers the same, inserting the bottom at the seam, and sliding the lantern base up again to accept the top of the strip in the correlating slot at the top of the seam. The lantern base can be slid back down again, and the middle retainer can be rocked into place, moving out from there. After completion of the side seam covers, the base itself is complete. We can check our progress to make sure everything is completed for the base, and then the lantern portion can be completed, then to the roof. Grabbing a window pane and the top lantern, bottom roof support, the top of the window with the two notches will fit together with the sides of the lantern support. Upon getting a window pressed into the notches on the lantern base, the top and the windows can be fitted together with another window pane on the opposite side into place. The structure will stand upright on its own to keep adding the rest of the window panes to the lantern base, then sliding them into the correct notches on top. With all 6 window panes into place, pressing the new structure down and into place will get it all aligned for the window side seam covers to sit into place momentarily until the roof is in place, to hold them down. Determining which side is outside, the window seam covers can simply be slid down into the slot just at the bottom of the window seams. They would just sit here until the roof is locked into place, so they might wiggle around a bit until then. Don't get too concentrated on making them perfect quite yet. Now that the seams are resting in place, the roof structure can be made and slid down on the new top we have created. Grabbing the 3 triangle pieces marked B, M, and T, the bottom of the M and the top of the B can be slid together, making an X shape. Holding two corners and pressing together, the last triangle marked T can be slid down and into the just wide enough slot of the X, making a six-sided X shape to support the roof panels. After the three pieces are pressed together, they can be slid down into the remaining 6 square holes on the top piece, locking them together with the lighthouse. And the roof panels are next. With the roof panel in hand, they will need to be divided evenly in the space above and in between the roof supports. Once divided evenly, press them onto the 4 tabs on the roof support to help hold them into place until they are all in and the seam covers are locked down, holding everything into place. They will not make a snapping noise as most of the other pieces do, but will just press into place, holding onto the notches. The remaining pieces go on the same, dividing the space, aligning the notches and tabs, pressing the top and then lower portion of the panel down and onto the tabs, assuring the pieces will rest into place. Once all are on top, the roof panel seam covers can go on, hiding the seams and locking the roof into place. Grabbing a roof panel seam cover and correlating retaining clips, the retaining clip will need to be inserted onto the seam cover before trying to apply to the roof. If not, the retainer will break. With the top of the seam cover facing up and supporting the back of the seam cover on both sides of the notch, press the retaining clip onto the seam cover sideways over the 2 notches, assuring which side is up on the retainer. Rocking back and forth makes it easier when assembling the 2 pieces. Once inside the retainer and pulled all the way to the opening, the strip can be rotated, allowing the retaining clip bend to be on the same side as the engraved line in the middle of the strip. Once the 2 pieces are together and supporting the opposite side of the roof, the retaining clip can be inserted and pressed into place around the bottom notch to hide the seam. Rocking back and forth will allow the retainer to walk into place and slide down onto the 2 panels. Getting them locked down into place, the next side seam covers go together the same, supporting the back side of the seam cover and rocking the retainer over the 2 notches to get it to slide on. Once on, the retainer and the side seam cover rotate to have the 2 pieces ready for further assembly and sliding onto the roof panels, always assuring the top of the retainer goes to the engraved line side of the seam cover. 3, 4, 5, and 6 go on just the same, remembering to support the back while sliding the retainer on. Once the last one is on and in place, the side seam covers for the windows can be aligned straight to the windows to remain in place. Almost to the end, the corbel supports for under the lantern will go on next. Choosing whichever side suits you best, left or right, the longest side of the corbel will be the side that goes next to the wall. So, inserting the notch on the longest side first, and then sliding and pushing up, inserting the second notch at the lantern base will ensure the easiest assembly. Once in, press into place to make sure it is held evenly throughout the corner. Moving to the right support, it goes in just the same, inserting the bottom notch from the long side in first, and then sliding the corbel up into the correct slot along the lantern base. Again, once in, make sure the corbel sits tight and square in the corner. There are 12 corbel supports in total. 2 down, and the remaining go in just the same, sliding the bottom in first, and then pressing the piece up into the lantern base, assuring the supports are in square and even in the corner. Once the last of the corbel supports are in place, the last of the lighthouse can be assembled. And that's a lantern railing and bottom railing for the walkway. The middle-sized rails are for the lantern window walkway. There are 6 in total and slide down into the corresponding holes left over in the lantern bays. Aligning the left and right side of the post to the holes, the rails can be pressed down to the stop point on the rail post, making them even all the way across. All the rails can go in just the same, aligning the post holes up and pressing them down and into place, being careful not to press down onto the rail itself. After the top rails are in place for the lantern, the bottom rails can be pressed into place, with the smallest rails going in the front and to the back of the walkway, and the longest rails going to the sides. The smallest rails are a little easier than the rest, but the long ones are a little trickier since there are 3 holes to align with a flexible rail. Getting one side of the long rail and then going for the middle post seems to be the easiest, while going back and forth to make sure the rail gets pressed into place all the way to the notch without damaging it. Another long rail, going easy, getting to the back of the lighthouse with the short rails, a little bit easier. And the last of the 2 long rails, taking care not to flex them too much, while pressing them in all the way to the notch. With the last short rail ready for assembly. The next thing to consider is putting the honeycomb on the roof. One honeycomb can be used or all can be used, depending on how tall you want the mast. I personally like one, but if I'm going to have a flag on top, at least 2 should be used to hold on to the flag mast, with the topmost honeycomb having the smallest hole to accept the flag mast. Either way, this is the only piece of the entire puzzle that will need gluing. So making sure the roof panel seam covers are straight and even, the honeycomb can be aligned on the tip top and glued down. You can choose to put the glue on the honeycomb or the 6 tips of the seam cover. Once put on and into place, it was allowed to dry for about 5 minutes before I added the last honeycomb, with a small hole that will accept the flag mast. Now that everything is on the lighthouse, the batteries can be put back in to turn on our latest creation, enjoying the timelessness of a flickering lighthouse you made to hold out memories for a lifetime. May your light shine on.
Feet up on the dash and the calling open road. Road trip classics on the radio. With your hand tied in mine, there's no such thing as time. Now we can go anywhere you wanna go. Ooh, there's no place we can't go. Ooh, my home is when I'm alone with you. With you. Some my arms. This life is not the same when we're apart. If you follow me tonight, I'll walk with you for